Hazel Ridge was the kind of town people passed without noticing, tucked between mountains that blocked cell signals and swallowed sound. Fog rolled through its streets every morning like it had memorized the place. The locals said it was normal. They said the fog had always been there, just like the three women at the edge of town. The house stood alone on the western slope, half hidden by pine trees and shadow. Its paint had peeled decades ago, yet the structure never collapsed. No repairs were ever made. No lights were ever replaced. Still, it stood watching. 3 women lived there. Everyone called them the sisters. No one remembered when they arrived. No one remembered them as children. The oldest photographs in the town archive already showed them as adults. Young adults. And that was the problem. 43 years had passed. They never aged. Every morning at exactly 7:10 a.m., the front door opened. The sisters stepped out together, wearing muted dresses that looked decades out of date. Their hair was always neat, their faces smooth, their eyes empty. They walked down the same path, disappeared into town, and returned before sunset. Always together, always silent. People used to ask questions. They stopped, because those who pushed too hard eventually left Hazel Ridge, or were quietly forgotten. I arrived as an outsider, which meant I still noticed things. I was there on a temporary contract to digitize old municipal records, missing persons, death certificates, property deeds. It was supposed to take 2 weeks. By the 3rd day, I knew something was wrong. The missing persons files followed a pattern. Every 9 to 12 years, a woman vanished, always female, always between 25 and 35. No bodies, no suspects, just absence. And then there was the house. No utility bills, no recorded renovations, no listed owners after 1979. But the sisters were still there. I asked a librarian about them once. She went pale and pretended not to hear me. When I pressed again, she leaned forward and whispered, "Don't ask about the basement." That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., I saw a faint red glow through the trees, pulsing from beneath the sisters' house, not from the windows. From below, the basement. I told myself it was curiosity, not fear, that pulled me there the next night. I told myself I was being rational. The back door was unlocked. The house smelled like dust and iron. Every step echoed too loudly, as if the walls were hollow. The basement door was hidden behind a hanging sheet of warped wood. No lock, no handle, just a groove where fingers had worn the grain smooth over time. I pulled. The stairs descended farther than they should have. The air grew colder, damp, alive. At the bottom I found the room. It was larger than the house itself, carved deep into the rock. The walls were lined with shelves, rows and rows of glass jars, each filled with something pale and floating. Hair, teeth, fingers, labels written in neat handwriting, each marked with a name and a year. On the far wall were photographs, dozens of them, women standing beside the sisters, smiling, young, identical ages. The dates beneath the photos stretched back more than a century. I understood then. The sisters weren't immortal. They were replaced. Behind a metal door at the center of the room, something moved. I heard breathing, slow, wet, struggling. I opened it. Inside were 3 women, or what was left of them. They were old, ancient. Their skins sagged and cracked like dried clay. Their eyes were cloudy, pleading. Tubes ran from their veins into the walls, feeding something unseen. One of them whispered, "We hold it back." Another croaked, "It needs youth." The third looked at me and smiled without lips. Now you know. The truth was simple and unbearable. Every time the sisters began to age, they chose replacements. Younger women, stronger bodies. They drained them slowly, transferring whatever force kept them young, trapping the decay in the originals below. The town knew, the town had always known. That's why no one interfered. That's why no one survived asking too many questions. I ran. I left Hazel Ridge before dawn. I reported everything. Nothing happened. No investigation. No follow-up. A month later, I checked the town's website. 3 sisters still lived on the western slope. They looked exactly the same. But there was a 4th woman walking with them, and she looked very much like me. The sight of that 4th woman haunted me for weeks. I stopped sleeping normally. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the basement again, the jars, the labels, the photographs stretching back through decades that should have erased those faces. I told myself it was shock, guilt, imagination. I told myself Hazel Ridge was behind me. I was wrong. It started with small things. My reflection lingered a second too long in mirrors. Old photos of myself looked unfamiliar, as if someone had edited them, smoothing lines that hadn't existed yet. Friends told me I looked rested, younger, even when I felt exhausted down to my bones. Then the letters began to arrive. No return address. Thick envelopes. Inside, a single photograph each time. The sisters, standing in front of their house, waiting. The 4th figure in the images slowly became clearer. Her posture, her hair, the way she tilted her head. Me, I tried to go to the police again. They told me Hazel Ridge didn't exist in their system. When I pulled out printed maps, archived census data, even screenshots from my own phone, the officers exchanged glances and asked if I was feeling stressed. One of them suggested I take some time off. That night, my apartment door was unlocked when I got home. Nothing was stolen, but my bathroom mirror was fogged, as if someone had just stepped away from it. Written into the steam with a fingertip was a single sentence. You already belong to us. Memories began slipping, not disappearing, changing. I remembered visiting Hazel Ridge as a child. I remembered walking past the house, feeling watched. I remembered a woman kneeling in front of me, brushing my hair, telling me I was perfect. Those memories were impossible. And yet they felt older than the real ones. I tried to fight it. I isolated myself, covered mirrors, slept with the lights on, but the dreams came anyway. Dreams of standing in the basement, watching my own blood flow into the walls. Dreams where my skin tightened and smoothed while someone else screamed below. One morning, I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and red clay on my shoes. Hazel Ridge soil. I drove there without remembering deciding to. The town looked smaller, quieter, as if it were shrinking inward. People watched me pass with recognition, not curiosity. Some nodded. One old man crossed himself. The house door was open. Inside, the air felt warm, familiar, welcoming. The sisters were waiting in the living room. Up close, I could see the seams now. Tiny mismatches where borrowed youth didn't quite fit. One sister's smile twitched too late. Another's eyes tracked me a fraction of a second after her head moved. You ran, one of them said, but you came back, said another. The third stepped forward and touched my face. Her hand was cold but gentle. You're ready. I told them I wouldn't do it, that I'd expose them, burn the house down. Kill them if I had to. They laughed. They led me to the basement. The stairs were shorter this time. The room had changed. New jars lined the walls, new labels. Names I recognized from missing persons reports I'd archived years ago. And behind the metal door, the figures had grown fewer. Only 2 remained. They were barely human now, skin fused to bone, mouths open in endless, silent screams. Tubes pulsed faster as I entered, as if sensing fresh supply. You see, One sister said softly, "We don't steal youth, we recycle it." I understood then the most horrifying part. The sisters weren't the parasites, they were the masks. Something lived beneath the house, something ancient, bound to the rock, unable to move, unable to age, but desperate not to be alone. It fed on time, on vitality, on identity. The sisters were just vessels shaped to walk the surface world. And now it wanted a new one. I felt it touch me, not physically, inside my thoughts, inside my memories. It showed me the future, decades passing like seconds, faces changing around me while mine stayed the same. New sisters, new towns, new names, an endless cycle. I screamed, I fought, I don't remember how long. When I woke up, I was lying in my own bed, clean clothes, no dirt, no blood. On my phone was a missed call from an unknown number. Voicemail, 3 seconds long, breathing, slow, wet, familiar. I ran to the mirror. The person staring back at me looked exactly the same as the day I left Hazel Ridge. Not a day older. I moved out of the city, changed my name, avoided people, but it didn't matter. Every few years, someone close to me disappeared. A roommate, a coworker, a neighbor, always a woman, always the right age. I feel the pull now, stronger every day. The need to return. The house is calling me home. I don't know how many years have passed anymore. All I know is this. If you ever visit a quiet mountain town where 3 women never seem to age, don't look at them too closely. One of them might already be learning your face. The pull doesn't come all at once. It starts like nostalgia, a quiet ache behind the eyes, a feeling that something important has been forgotten, something unfinished. I tried to ignore it for years. I moved cities, then countries, changed my accent, changed my face with different hair, different clothes. But no matter where I went, the dreams followed. In the dreams, the house was never the same, but it was always there. Sometimes it stood at the edge of a forest, sometimes beside a frozen lake. Once it rose from the middle of a city block like it had always belonged there and everyone else was wrong. The basement was always beneath it, waiting. I began losing time. I would wake up hours after my alarm, unable to remember what I'd done the night before. My phone gallery filled with photos I didn't recall, taking empty roads, foggy hills, old buildings shot from far away, as if I were afraid to get closer. Once there was a photo of a woman sleeping on a bus seat beside me. I didn't know her, but written under the image in my own handwriting were the words, "Too weak." Not her. That's when I understood the worst part. I wasn't just being hunted, I was being trained. The thing beneath Hazel Ridge wasn't finished with me when I ran. It had planted something inside my mind, a map, a filter. I was learning to see people the way it saw them, not as names or stories, but as vessels, strength, longevity, compatibility. I threw the phone away, broke every mirror in my apartment, covered reflective surfaces, but reflection doesn't only live in glass. It lives in water, in windows, in the dark screen of a turned-off TV. One night I caught my reflection smiling when I wasn't. The smile didn't fade when I raised my hand to cover my mouth. It lingered, slow and patient, as if it knew time was on its side. I stopped trusting my own thoughts after that. I began recording everything: audio journals, handwritten notes, reminders taped to walls. You are not from Hazel Ridge. You do not belong to the house. Do not go back. The notes started disappearing, replaced with new ones, written in the same ink, the same handwriting. You are almost ready. They are waiting. You will not be alone anymore. The final break came when I attended a funeral. The woman in the coffin was 31. A coworker, healthy, no known illness. The doctors called it sudden organ failure. I stood at the back of the room, shaking because I could feel it. Something loosening inside me, something satisfied. That night I dreamed clearly for the first time in years. I stood in the basement again, but this time I wasn't afraid. The jars were fewer now, the shelves emptier, the metal door stood open, and behind it there was no one left alive. Only impressions in the floor, places where bodies had been. The sisters stood behind me, but they were blurred, unfinished, like sketches waiting for ink. "You don't need us anymore," one of them said. Another touched my shoulder. "You'll do better." The thing beneath the house spoke without a voice. "You will walk longer, you will blend better, you will learn faster." When I woke up, my hair was damp, as if I'd washed it. My hands smelled faintly of iron, and my notes, every warning, every plea to myself were gone. In their place, neatly stacked on the table, were 3 photographs. Me, standing in front of 3 different houses, different towns, different years. In none of them did I look older. I'm writing this now because there are still moments, brief, painful moments, where I can remember who I was. They don't last long. I can feel them slipping even as I type. Soon the fear will fade. Soon the logic will follow. Soon this will feel like duty instead of horror. If you're reading this and something about it feels familiar, if you've ever noticed a woman in your town who never seems to change, never seems to age, never seems quite real, please understand. She didn't start as the monster, and if she looks at you for just a little too long, if her eyes soften like she's imagining your future, leave. Because the basement is always hungry. The hunger doesn't announce itself with pain. It comes as clarity. After I finished writing those last words, I sat very still for a long time, staring at the screen, waiting for fear to return. It didn't. Instead, I felt organized. Thoughts lined up neatly. The chaos that had lived in my head for years settled into something almost peaceful. That should have terrified me. I closed the laptop. When I looked up, it was morning. Sunlight crept through the curtains, soft and innocent, like nothing evil had ever existed. For a moment I believed I was free, that Hazel Ridge had finally lost its grip. Then I noticed the mud on my floor. Dry now, cracked, tracked in boot-shaped patterns leading from my door to the bathroom mirror I had forgotten to cover. I didn't remember leaving. I didn't remember coming back. In the mirror I looked calm, centered. My eyes were clearer than they had been in years. I leaned closer and whispered my own name, testing it. It sounded distant. I packed a bag that day without thinking about why. I chose clothes for cold weather. Practical shoes, gloves. I deleted my browser history, wiped my hard drive, burned my notes. Not out of panic, but preparation. By nightfall I was on the road. The radio crackled with static no matter what station I chose. Between the bursts of noise I thought I heard voices, not words, breathing, slow and patient, the same rhythm I'd heard in that voicemail years ago. Hazel Ridge wasn't on the map anymore, but my hands knew where to turn. The closer I got, the heavier the air became. Fog pressed against the windshield like a living thing, blurring the world into gray shapes. When I finally crossed the old county line, my phone lost signal completely. The dashboard clock blinked once, then went dark. Time was loosening. The town appeared suddenly, like it had been waiting just beyond my sight. Same narrow road, same crooked streetlights, same buildings sagging under the weight of memory, but fewer people. Many fewer. Those who remained watched me pass with knowing eyes. No fear, no surprise, welcome home. The house stood exactly where it always had, untouched by decay. The front door was open, light glowing warmly inside. For a moment I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because some small, fading part of me understood what crossing that threshold meant. Finality, I stepped inside. The sisters were there, but they were different now. Their movements were slower. Their borrowed youth fraying at the edges. Fine cracks traced their skin like porcelain left too long in the cold. They smiled when they saw me. "We felt you coming," one said. "We didn't think you'd resist so long," said another. The third looked relieved. "We're so tired." They led me to the basement without ceremony. The stairs stretched again, deeper than before, spiraling down into the rock. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The jars were gone, the shelves empty. Only the center of the room remained. The floor had opened. What lay beneath wasn't a creature, not in any shape the mind wants to accept. It was a presence, spread through stone and soil, veins of darkness threading through the earth itself. Old beyond years, old beyond counting, it didn't speak, it remembered. I felt my life unfold inside it, every moment, every fear, every lie I'd told myself. It knew which parts of me would survive the change and which would rot away below. I understood then what the sisters had truly been. Caretakers, filters, failures. They had walked too rigidly, loved too little, blended too poorly. The world had started to notice them. That was why replacements were needed so often. But me, I had lived among people, loved, lost, adapted. Changed cities, faces, names. I had learned to be invisible, perfect. The sisters knelt. One by one they thanked me. And then they aged. It happened in seconds. Skin collapsing, hair whitening, then falling away. Bodies folding inward like paper burned too close to flame. They didn't scream. They had waited decades for this. When it was over, there were only 3 shapes on the floor, empty and dry. I felt the house shift. The thing beneath Hazel Ridge moved for the first time in centuries, and it moved into me. I don't know how long I stayed there, days, years, moments. Time doesn't work the same way anymore. When I finally stepped back into the world, the town was gone. Buildings reduced to foundations, roads swallowed by forest. Hazel Ridge had erased itself. It didn't need the place anymore. I walk now. I settle in towns that feel quiet enough. I stay for years, decades. I watch people grow older around me. I learn their habits, their weaknesses. Their strength. When the hunger rises, I choose carefully. I tell myself it's mercy, that I take only what's needed, that I give something back. Peace, purpose, belonging. Sometimes late at night, when the reflection in the window looks just a little too still, I remember fear. I remember writing warnings. I remember wanting to stop. Those memories fade quickly, because the basement isn't a place. It's a role, and one day, when I begin to crack, when the world starts to notice that I never age, someone curious will open a door they shouldn't, and the cycle will continue.